At Christmas, my millionaire daughter asked if I got my $5,000 allowance. I was confused, then my DIL froze. The silence that followed was the kind that makes your ears ring. Even the Christmas music seemed to fade away. My grandson, who'd been playing with his new toy car, stopped and looked around the table like he could feel something was wrong but couldn't figure out what. Have you watched someone's face drain of color over something you didn't understand? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. The fork froze halfway to my mouth when my granddaughter asked, "Grandpa, did you get your $5,000 allowance this month?" Have you ever had a family dinner explode with one innocent question? Have you watched someone's face drain of color over something you didn't understand? That Christmas Eve in Charlotte, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hide the biggest lies. What would you do if you discovered your own family had been stealing from you, and lying about it for almost a year? If someone in your family was stealing from you right under your nose, would you confront them immediately, or would you stay quiet and gather evidence first? Comment, confront, or investigate below. The living room smelled like pine candles and cinnamon cookies. Christmas music played softly from the old radio on the kitchen counter. Everything felt perfect in my daughter-in-law's house in Charlotte. The kind of perfect that makes you forget your troubles and just enjoy being with family. I was cutting into my ham when it happened. My granddaughter, all of 8 years old with ribbons in her hair, looked across the table at me with those big innocent eyes. "Grandpa, did you get your $5,000 allowance this month?" The fork stopped moving. The room went quiet except for that Christmas music still playing in the background. I looked up, confused, my mouth half open like I was about to ask a question I didn't know how to form. Allowance? The word came out funny, like I'd never heard it before. That's when I noticed my daughter-in-law's wine glass. Her knuckles had gone white around the stem, and her face looked like she'd seen a ghost walk through the front door. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at my granddaughter like the child had just revealed a family secret. My son cleared his throat. "She meant, you know, holiday money." But my granddaughter shook her head, those ribbons dancing. "No, Daddy. The money Aunt Sarah sends every month. The $5,000 for Grandpa." The silence that followed was the kind that makes your ears ring. Even the Christmas music seemed to fade away. My grandson, who'd been playing with his new toy car, stopped and looked around the table like he could feel something was wrong but couldn't figure out what. I set my fork down carefully. "Sarah sends me money?" My daughter Sarah lives in Atlanta. She's a business consultant, does real well for herself. But I hadn't talked to her in weeks, maybe a month. Life gets busy, you know. I figured she was just caught up in work. "Every month," my granddaughter said, nodding like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Mommy always checks to make sure it went through." I looked at my daughter-in-law. Her hand was shaking now. Actually shaking. "Is that true?" I asked her directly. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. My son jumped in instead. "Dad, we can talk about this later. It's Christmas." But something cold was spreading through my chest, like ice water in my veins. Talk about what? Money I've never seen. The Christmas lights reflected off my daughter-in-law's wine glass as she finally set it down. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. I thought you knew." "Knew what?" My son stood up from the table. "Dad, please. Not in front of the kids." But I stayed seated. Something told me not to move, not to let this moment pass. "Knew what?" I asked again. My granddaughter looked between all the adults, confusion replacing her earlier cheerfulness. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, honey," I told her, keeping my voice gentle. "You didn't say anything wrong." But inside, my mind was racing. Sarah had been sending me money? $5,000 a month? For how long? And where was it going if I'd never seen it? I looked at my son, who was still standing, his hands gripping the back of his chair. Then at my daughter-in-law, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "How long?" I asked. "Dad. How long has Sarah been sending me money that I've never received?" The question hung in the air like smoke from blown-out candles. My daughter-in-law's face had gone completely pale, and my son looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. My granddaughter answered for them. "Since last Christmas, Grandpa. Almost a whole year." Pause here and guess, who in this family do you think has been stealing the money? I excused myself from the dinner table and walked to the guest bedroom upstairs. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number in Atlanta. She answered on the second ring. "Dad. Merry Christmas Eve. Sarah, honey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Her voice changed immediately. "What's wrong? You sound upset. Have you been sending me money every month?" Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Yes. $5,000. Every month for 11 months now." My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, staring at the Christmas lights twinkling outside the window. "I never got it, Sarah. Not a single penny." "What do you mean you never got it?" "Dad, I have the wire confirmations. It's going to your account." "What account?" "I only have one checking account, and there's been no deposits like that." I heard papers rustling on her end. "Dad, I'm looking at the wire confirmations right now. Account number ending in 7342. First National Bank in Dayton. Your name is on all of them." My heart was pounding. "Sarah, my account ends in 9158. I've never seen account 7342 in my life." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Dad," her voice was barely a whisper. "That's $55,000. $55,000. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood up and started pacing the small bedroom, my sock feet silent on the carpet. "Who set up the transfers?" I asked. "Marcus helped me with the paperwork. Said it would be easier if he handled the bank details since he lives closer to you." "Marcus." "My son. Downstairs right now, probably explaining to his wife why their 8-year-old had just blown up their world." "Sarah, I need you to send me copies of everything. Every wire confirmation, every piece of paperwork. Tonight." "Dad, I'm so sorry. I thought. Marcus said you were just being proud, not wanting to acknowledge the help. I should have called you directly. You were trying to take care of your old man. That's not something to apologize for." But my mind was racing ahead, connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Marcus had access to my personal information. He'd helped me with paperwork after Mom died. He knew my social security number, my mother's maiden name, all the things you need to open a bank account. "The emails," Sarah continued, her voice getting stronger with anger. "Marcus would send me updates, telling me you were doing well, that the money was helping with your bills. He even thanked me on your behalf a few times. Those thanks had never come from me." "Send me everything," I repeated. "Every email, every confirmation, every piece of paper you have." Someone opened a bank account in his name without his knowledge. In your gut, who do you think did it? Sleep didn't come that night. I stared at the ceiling in that guest room, listening to the house settle and my mind racing through a year of conversations with my son. Every time he'd stopped by, just to check on the old man. Every time he'd offered to help with paperwork or asked if I needed anything from the bank. By 7 a.m., I was dressed and waiting in the truck with the engine running. First National Bank opened at 8 a.m. sharp. I was their first customer, walking through those glass doors with a folder full of printouts Sarah had emailed me overnight. Wire confirmations. Account numbers. Signatures I'd supposedly made. The bank manager, Mrs. Peterson, had known me for 15 years. She took one look at my face and led me straight to her office. "Bill, what can I do for you?" I slid the papers across her desk. Someone opened an account in my name. I need to see the paperwork. She studied the wire confirmations, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Account 7342. Let me pull the file. It took her 10 minutes to come back with a manila folder. She sat down and opened it carefully, like she was handling evidence in a crime scene. The account was opened 14 months ago, she said. Savings account, with online access and wire transfer capabilities. I never opened that account. She turned the signature card toward me. There was my name in black ink, but the handwriting made my stomach drop. It was close. Too close to be accidental. Someone had practiced writing my signature. This isn't my signature, I said. Mrs. Peterson pulled out a magnifying glass and compared it to my signature on file from my regular checking account. The differences were small but clear. The B in Bill was too sharp. The son in Peterson was too neat. My real signature had gotten sloppier over the years, especially after my arthritis got worse. You're right, she said quietly. This is a forgery. She flipped through more pages. Emergency contact information. Next of kin. All the paperwork had been filled out in the same too neat handwriting. The emergency contact is listed as Marcus Peterson, she said. Your son? I nodded, feeling sick. He's authorized for account information and has online access credentials. That's when she showed me the security footage records. A timestamp from 14 months ago, right after Mom's funeral when I'd been in and out of the hospital with heart problems. The grainy black and white image showed a man at the signature desk, filling out paperwork. Average height, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. But I knew that jacket. I'd given it to him for his birthday 2 years ago. We'll need to file a fraud report, Mrs. Peterson said. This is identity theft. She gathered all the paperwork and made copies. Account opening documents. Wire transfer logs. Online access records. Every month for nearly a year, someone had been monitoring that account, transferring out Sarah's deposits as soon as they arrived. Where was the money going? I asked. She pulled up another screen. Multiple transfers to various accounts. Some cash withdrawals. It's all documented here. What would you do with proof that your own child forged your signature? I drove straight to Murphy's Diner on 3rd Street, the kind of place that still served coffee in thick white mugs and minded their own business. Frank was already there in our usual corner booth, reading the morning paper like he had every Tuesday for the past 5 years. Frank Miller. Retired police officer. 32 years on the force before his knees gave out. If anyone would know how to handle this mess, it was him. He looked up when I sat down, took one look at my face, and folded his newspaper. You look like hell, Bill. I slid the manila folder across the table. Read these. Frank had a way of reading documents that reminded you he used to be a cop. Methodical. Quiet. His jaw got tighter with each page, but he didn't say a word until he'd gone through everything twice. Finally, he set the papers down and looked at me. Your boy did this? Looks like it. Frank leaned back in the booth. $55,000. That's not petty theft, Bill. That's felony fraud. The waitress came by with coffee. Neither of us touched it. What would you do? I asked. Frank pulled out a small notebook, the kind cops carry. Old habits. First, we document everything. Timeline, opportunities, evidence. He started writing. When did Marcus have access to your personal documents? I thought back through the past year and a half. After Mom's funeral. He helped me organize her paperwork. Said I shouldn't have to deal with all that legal stuff while I was grieving. What about your social security card? Birth certificate? Safety deposit box at the bank. But he knew where Mom kept the key. Frank nodded, still writing. Hospital stays? Times when you weren't home? Heart procedure last spring. Was in the hospital 4 days, then stayed with them for a week while I recovered. Perfect opportunity. Frank tapped his pen against the notebook. He's got your documents, knows your habits, has your trust. Classic setup for identity theft. He flipped to a new page. What about his financial situation? Any money problems you know about? I thought about it. His wife mentioned they were house shopping. Looking at places in the fancy part of Charlotte. Said business was good. Business funded by your daughter's generosity. Frank's voice had an edge to it now. Bill, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was planned. Calculated. My coffee was getting cold, but I couldn't bring myself to drink it. What's my next move? Frank closed his notebook. We document everything. Get official statements from the bank. Contact the wire transfer company. Build a case that would hold up in court. He paused, studying my face. Question is, are you ready to treat your son like the criminal he is? Which family gathering would you check first for evidence? The safety deposit box key sat in Mom's old jewelry case, exactly where she'd kept it for 20 years. But something was wrong. The key had been moved. Just slightly, but I remembered exactly how Mom used to arrange things. She was particular about order, said it helped her remember where everything was. Frank came with me to the bank. Mrs. Peterson led us to the vault, her heels clicking against the tile floor. The metal box slid out with a screech that made my teeth hurt. I opened it slowly, my hands shaking. Half of it was empty. Jesus, Frank whispered behind me. The birth certificate was gone. Mom's death certificate too. Even the old bank statements I'd kept from when she was alive, the ones showing her Social Security payments and pension deposits. All missing. But what really made my blood run cold was what was left behind. The documents were organized differently. Someone had gone through everything, taken what they needed, and tried to put the rest back the way they found it. But they didn't know Mom's system. Check the access log, I told Mrs. Peterson. She pulled it up on her computer. Last access was 3 months ago. March 15th. My heart sank. March 15th. I remembered that date perfectly. I'd been in the hospital for my heart procedure, scared and alone, while someone was down here stealing my life on paper. Signature shows Marcus Peterson as authorized family member, she continued. I never authorized him, I said. Frank was examining the remaining documents. Bill, look at this. He held up an old insurance policy, one of the few papers left behind. But there were pencil marks on it now, little notes in the margins that hadn't been there before. Account numbers, Frank said. Someone was copying down your information. Mrs. Peterson printed out the access log. The signature was neat and careful, just like the forged signature on the fake bank account. But this time, I could see the date clearly. March 15th, 2:30 p.m. I'd been in surgery at 2:30 p.m. that day. He came here while I was having heart surgery, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Frank's jaw tightened. That's cold, Bill. Even for a thief. We spent another hour going through what was left. Frank took photos of everything with his phone, documenting the empty spaces, the moved items, the pencil marks on the remaining papers. This establishes a pattern, he said as we walked back to the parking lot. First, he gets access to your documents. Then he opens the fake account. Then he starts intercepting the money. The spring air felt cold against my face. My own son. Your own son, Frank repeated. And he did it while you were fighting for your life in a hospital bed. I got in my truck and sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see people going about their normal day. Shopping, talking, laughing. None of them knowing that their world could explode with one innocent question from an 8-year-old girl. What's next? I asked Frank. Now we find out how deep this goes. He stole documents while his father was having heart surgery. React with an emoji, how does that make you feel? The fraud specialist's office smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink. Sandra Hayes had been investigating financial crimes for 12 years, and it showed in the way she organized the papers on her desk. Everything in neat piles, color-coded tabs, notes written in precise handwriting. "This isn't amateur work," she said, studying the documents Frank and I had brought her. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing." She spread out copies of the forged signature cards, the wire transfer confirmations, and the safety deposit box access log. Under her desk lamp, the evidence looked even more damaging. "Look at the timeline," she said, pointing with a red pen. "Account opened in February. First wire transfer in March. But here's what's interesting, there were test deposits first." "Test deposits?" "Small amounts. $10, $25. Someone was making sure the system worked before the big money started flowing." She pulled up something on her computer screen. The account had a fake phone number attached to it. When the bank tried to send verification codes or alerts, they went to a number that doesn't exist. Frank leaned forward. "So no way for Bill to get notified about account activity." "Exactly. But here's where it gets sophisticated." Sandra clicked to another screen. The money wasn't just sitting there. It was being moved immediately. Same-day transfers to multiple accounts. My stomach dropped. Multiple accounts? 3 different banks. Small amounts to each one, under the reporting limits. Classic money laundering technique. She handed me a printout. "We're talking about someone who understands banking regulations. Who knows how to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts." "My son works in insurance," I said. "Would he know this stuff?" "Insurance professionals deal with financial institutions all the time. Claims processing, settlement accounts, regulatory compliance. He'd definitely have the knowledge." Sandra gathered the papers into a folder. "Mr. Peterson, I need you to understand something. This isn't just identity theft. This is systematic financial exploitation. The planning, the execution, the cover-up, this took months of preparation." She opened another file. "I've seen cases like this before. Family members who exploit trust relationships. But this one is particularly calculated." Frank was taking notes again. "What are our options?" "First, I'm freezing the fraudulent account immediately. Any remaining funds will be held as evidence." Sandra picked up her phone. "Then we file a comprehensive fraud report with local police and the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit." FBI? Wire fraud across state lines is federal jurisdiction. Your daughter in Atlanta, the fake account in Ohio, money moving between multiple states, this crosses federal lines. She started typing on her computer. "I'm also putting alerts on all of your legitimate accounts, Mr. Peterson. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again." The printer hummed to life, spitting out official-looking forms. "Here's your fraud report number," Sandra said, handing me a paper. "Keep this safe. You'll need it for the police report." As we walked out of the bank, Frank shook his head. "Systematic financial exploitation. That's what she called it." "Sounds worse when you put a fancy name on it," I said. "It is worse, Bill. This wasn't a desperate son asking for help. This was a predator." Predict, will the police take this family theft seriously? I remembered the old iPad sitting on the kitchen counter at home. We'd bought it for Mom a few years back, thinking it would help her stay connected with the grandkids. After she passed, it just sat there, still logged into all the family accounts we used to share photos and messages. Frank followed me into my kitchen. The iPad was right where I'd left it, under a stack of mail and grocery store flyers. "What are we looking for?" Frank asked. "Messages. If Marcus and his wife were planning this, they might have talked about it." I turned on the device and waited for it to boot up. The family messaging app showed hundreds of conversations going back months. Most of it was normal family stuff, photos of the grandkids, dinner plans, birthday reminders. Then I found it. A conversation between Marcus and his wife from 6 months ago. My hand started shaking as I read through the messages. Marcus, Dad's monthly deposit cleared. $5,000 right on schedule. His wife, he still doesn't know. Marcus, too proud to even look at bank statements. Keeps talking about being independent. His wife, what if Sarah calls him directly? Marcus, I told her he doesn't like talking about money. Makes him feel like a charity case. Frank read over my shoulder. Keep going. The messages got worse. Planning conversations about which bills to pay from Dad's account to avoid suspicion. Jokes about me being old and clueless. Even discussions about buying their new house with what they called the extra income. But the one that made me feel sick was from 2 months ago. His wife, he's getting suspicious. Asked me about Sarah sending money. Marcus. We need to be smarter. Maybe start winding this down. His wife, not yet. Tommy needs braces and we just put the down payment on the house. Marcus, Dad won't figure it out. And if he does, what's he going to do? He won't call the cops on his own son. I set the iPad down and walked to the window. Outside, my neighbor was mowing his lawn, the sound drifting through the glass. Normal life continuing while my world fell apart. They used my grandson's braces to justify stealing from me, I said. Frank was still reading. There's more, Bill. Recent stuff. I came back to the table. The messages from last week showed increasing panic. Marcus, Dad called Sarah directly. She told him about the monthly transfers. His wife, what did you tell him? Marcus, tried to deflect. But he's asking questions. His wife, maybe we should give some of it back. Say there was a banking error. Marcus, too late for that. We've spent most of it. The final message was from yesterday, Christmas Day, after the dinner disaster. Marcus, the kids spilled everything. Dad knows about the money. His wife, what do we do? Marcus, nothing. We deny everything. Say Sarah's confused about the account details. Frank took photos of every message with his phone. This is a confession, Bill. In writing. My own grandson's dental work, I said again. I couldn't get past that detail. They'd stolen from me to pay for braces for a child I loved. The good news is this gives us everything we need for a criminal case, Frank said. The bad news is there's no going back from this. What hurt more, the theft or the mockery? Share your thoughts below. Detective Rodriguez had kind eyes and calloused hands, the kind that come from years of dealing with people's worst moments. His office was small and cluttered, with case files stacked on every surface and a coffee mug that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. Family financial abuse, he said, not looking surprised. We see more of it than people think. I sat across from his desk with Frank beside me, our folder of evidence between us like a bridge we couldn't cross back over. How much are we talking about? Detective Rodriguez asked. 55,000 confirmed. Maybe more. He whistled low. That's felony territory. Grand theft, identity fraud, wire fraud if it crossed state lines. He pulled out a form. Tell me how you discovered it. I went through the whole story. Christmas dinner. The innocent question. The phone call to Sarah. The bank investigation. The text messages on the iPad. Detective Rodriguez took notes in a shorthand I couldn't read. He had a way of nodding that made you feel like he believed every word, even the parts that sounded crazy when you said them out loud. The suspect is your biological son? Marcus Peterson. Lives in Charlotte with his wife and 2 kids. And you're certain he had access to the documents needed to open the fraudulent account? Frank handed over the evidence folder. Safety deposit box access log. Shows he was there while Bill was in surgery. Detective Rodriguez studied the timeline, comparing dates and documents. This shows premeditation. Planning. Not a crime of opportunity. He opened a thick folder and pulled out some paperwork. Mr. Peterson, I need you to understand what you're starting here. Filing criminal charges against a family member changes everything. Permanently. I understand. Do you? Because I've seen families torn apart by cases like this. Even when we get convictions, even when the money gets returned, the relationships never recover. I thought about my grandkids. About Christmas dinners that would never feel the same. About a son who'd stolen from me while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed. Detective, if your son stole $55,000 from you, what would you do? He set down his pen. I'd file charges. Family or not, theft is theft. He started filling out the official report. Case number. Suspect information. Evidence summary. Each line making it more real, more permanent. We'll need to coordinate with the FBI since this crosses state lines, he said. Wire fraud is federal jurisdiction. FBI? Don't worry. They handle white-collar crime all the time. This is straightforward compared to some cases. He finished the paperwork and handed me a copy. Case number 2024-1247. Keep this safe. As we stood to leave, Detective Rodriguez looked at me seriously. Mr. Peterson, be careful who you tell about this report. Sometimes family theft escalates when people feel cornered. The warning followed us out to the parking lot. Should he confront his son directly, or let the police handle everything? The phone call came 3 days after I filed the police report. Marcus, sounding casual as Sunday morning. Hey Dad, want to come over for dinner this weekend? Kids miss their grandpa. I almost said no. Almost told him I knew everything and hung up. But something in Detective Rodriguez's warning made me think twice. Sometimes family theft escalates when people feel cornered. Sure, I said. What time? 6 o'clock Saturday. Sarah might drive up from Atlanta too. Sarah. That was interesting. Why would they want Sarah there? I called Frank after I hung up. They invited me to dinner. Sarah too. That's either really stupid or really calculating, Frank said. Want backup? You mean come with me? I mean sit in the parking lot with my phone ready. These people have already proven they'll steal from family. No telling what they'll do when they feel trapped. Saturday evening came gray and cold. I drove to Charlotte with Frank following 2 cars behind. The house looked the same as always, red brick, white shutters, kids' toys scattered across the front yard. But I saw it differently now. Every nice thing, every upgrade, every new piece of furniture bought with money stolen from me. Marcus answered the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dad. Come in, come in. Kids are so excited to see you. The living room felt different. Tense. His wife was in the kitchen, making more noise than necessary with pots and pans. Sarah was already there, sitting stiffly on the couch with a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. Sarah drove up early, Marcus said. We thought it would be good to have the whole family together. The whole family. Except now I knew what that meant to him. Dinner was awkward from the start. The kids seemed to sense something was wrong and stayed quiet. Sarah kept looking between Marcus and me like she was waiting for someone to explode. I played along. Asked about work, complimented the food, acted like a grandfather who had no idea his son was a thief. Then Marcus made his move. Dad, we've been thinking. You're getting older, managing finances can be complicated. Maybe it would be easier if we helped you consolidate your accounts. His wife nodded from the kitchen doorway. For tax purposes. Keep everything organized. Consolidate how? I asked, cutting my chicken carefully. Well, you've got accounts at different banks, Social Security coming in, Sarah's monthly gifts. It would be simpler to have everything in one place. Sarah's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Monthly gifts? The money you send Dad every month, Marcus said smoothly. He mentioned it gets confusing, keeping track of everything. I watched Sarah's face change. She set down her wine glass and looked directly at me. Dad, are you having trouble managing the money I send? This was it. The moment of truth. Marcus was trying to get me to admit confusion, maybe even incompetence. Set up a story where consolidating accounts made sense. I manage just fine, I said quietly. Marcus pressed harder. But Dad, you said yourself it was overwhelming. Remember? All those different accounts, different statements. I looked at my son across the table. At his wife hovering in the doorway. At my grandchildren eating their dinner, innocent in all this. I never said that, Marcus. The silence that followed was deafening. How much money do you think they actually stole? Put your guess in the comments. The private investigator's office was nothing like I expected. Janet Sullivan worked out of a converted house on Oak Street, with mismatched furniture and file cabinets that had seen better days. But Frank said she was the best in the business when it came to financial crimes. $87,000, she said, sliding a thick report across her desk. That's what we can trace so far. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd been thinking 55,000 was bad enough. But 87,000? That was more than I'd made some years when I was still working. How? I asked. Janet opened the report and showed me page after page of bank statements, transaction records, and account summaries. Your son was busy. The monthly transfers from your daughter were just the beginning. She pointed to a highlighted section. He also redirected your Social Security payments for 4 months last year. Small amounts each time, so you wouldn't notice right away. My Social Security. The money I'd earned with 40 years of work, fixing cars and machinery until my hands were permanently stained with grease and my back ached every morning. Then there's your pension from the county, Janet continued. He set up a direct deposit change form. Sent your pension checks to the fake account for 6 months. I remembered being confused about my pension payments last fall. They seemed smaller than usual. Marcus had suggested it was probably taxes or some administrative fee. I'd trusted him. But wait, Janet said, flipping to another page. There's more. More. I couldn't imagine what else was left to steal. Your mother's estate settlement. The small inheritance she left you? That went to the fake account too. Mom's inheritance. $3,000 from her savings account, left to me because I was the one who took care of her in her final years. Money I'd planned to use for a small memorial garden in the backyard. He intercepted the check from the estate attorney, Janet explained. Deposited it into the fraudulent account using mobile banking. Frank was reading over my shoulder. Jesus, Bill. He stole your mother's final gift to you. But Janet wasn't finished. The most sophisticated part was the credit monitoring. He used your Social Security number to open 3 credit cards in your name. Credit cards? Small limits initially. $500, $1,000 each. But he's been making minimum payments to keep them in good standing, then taking cash advances. She showed me copies of credit card statements I'd never seen. Total debt in your name, $12,000. That's when the real weight of it hit me. Not only had he stolen my money, but he'd put me in debt. Debt I was legally responsible for because the cards were in my name. The good news is we have documentation for everything, Janet said. Bank records, credit applications, even security footage from some of the ATM withdrawals. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Enough evidence to support criminal charges and civil recovery. I sat there holding that flash drive, feeling the weight of my son's betrayal in a small piece of plastic and metal. There's something else, Janet said quietly. I looked up at her. They've been using your credit to take out loans. You're liable for debts you never created. React if this revelation shocked you. $87,000 stolen from their own father. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't drive to Charlotte. I didn't knock on Marcus's door demanding answers. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote the most important letter of my life. The words came easier than I expected. Maybe because I'd been thinking about what to say for weeks. Maybe because the truth has a way of writing itself once you stop being afraid of it. Marcus. By now you know that I've discovered the account you opened in my name. You know that I've found the forged signature cards, the wire transfer records, and the text messages between you and Jennifer about the old man's account. You know that your daughter innocently revealed what you've been hiding for almost a year. $87,000. That's what the investigators found. Not just Sarah's monthly gifts, but Social Security payments you redirected, pension deposits you rerouted, even the small inheritance from your mother's estate that never reached me. I trusted you with my personal information when Mom died. I gave you access to my documents because you said you wanted to help me through the grief. Instead, you used that trust to steal from me while I was at my weakest. You have 30 days to return every penny. All $87,000, plus the interest it should have earned, plus the legal fees I've had to pay to uncover your theft. If full restitution is not made within 30 days, I will pursue criminal charges for identity theft, fraud, and elder financial abuse. The evidence is documented and filed with the appropriate authorities. Your sister Sarah will receive a copy of this letter, so she knows where her generous gifts actually went. My attorney will receive a copy for his files. Detective Rodriguez at Dayton PD will receive a copy for the ongoing investigation. You are no longer welcome in my home. You are no longer part of my financial or personal affairs. Any future contact will be through attorneys only. This is not a negotiation. This is not a family discussion. This is justice. Your father, William Peterson. I read it 3 times, checking every word. No emotion. No pleading. No anger. Just facts and consequences. Frank had taught me that the best confrontations aren't loud, they're clear. I printed 4 copies on clean white paper. 1 for Marcus. 1 for Sarah. 1 for my attorney. 1 for Detective Rodriguez. The letter to Marcus went certified mail, requiring his signature for delivery. I wanted legal proof he'd received it. The other copies went regular mail, same day. Tuesday morning, the letter was delivered to Marcus's house in Charlotte. I knew because I tracked the certified mail online, watching as it moved from Dayton to Charlotte, then showed, delivered, signed for by M. Peterson, at 11:47 a.m. Wednesday evening, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus standing on my front porch. But he wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit stood beside him, carrying a briefcase. Marcus had brought a lawyer. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." "No," I said simply. "We don't." The lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Peterson, I'm James Crawford, representing your son. Perhaps we can discuss this matter rationally, as a family." I looked at Marcus, who couldn't meet my eyes, then back at the lawyer. "What would your letter have said?" "Share 1 line you'd include." I let them into my living room, but I didn't offer them coffee or ask them to sit. They stood in the middle of the room while I took my usual chair by the window. The lawyer did all the talking. Marcus stood behind him like a child hiding behind his parent at a doctor's office. "Mr. Peterson, my client was attempting to help manage your finances during a difficult period. Any discrepancies in the accounts can be explained as administrative oversights." I almost laughed. Administrative oversights? Is that what we're calling $87,000 in theft now? "That's a very serious accusation," Crawford said, opening his briefcase. "My client has prepared a detailed explanation of his financial management activities on your behalf." He handed me a folder full of papers. Bank statements, transaction records, even a handwritten log that was supposed to show where my money had gone. According to Marcus's version, he'd been paying my bills, managing my investments, even setting aside money for my future care needs. The only problem was, none of it was true. These bills, I said, pointing to the first page. My mortgage was paid off 3 years ago. This electric bill? Triple what I actually pay. This medical expense? I have Medicare and supplemental insurance. Crawford glanced at Marcus, who was staring at the floor. There may be some confusion in the record keeping, the lawyer said. The only confusion, I replied, is why my son thought I was stupid enough to believe this. That's when Marcus finally spoke. Dad, I was trying to help. You were struggling after Mom died, and Sarah wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I thought it would be easier if I managed everything. Without telling me. Without asking permission. By forging my signature and stealing my identity. I wasn't stealing. Then where's the money, Marcus? Silence filled the room like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. My attorney, David Kim, had prepared me for this moment. He'd told me to stay calm, stick to facts, and let their lies dig their own grave. My client is prepared to make full restitution, Crawford said finally. To avoid any unpleasantness for the family. Full restitution plus interest, legal fees, and a signed confession acknowledging the theft, I countered. Those are the terms. Marcus looked up for the first time since entering my house. A confession? Dad, that would ruin my reputation. My business. Jennifer's career. You should have thought about that before you stole from your own father. Crawford cleared his throat. Mr. Peterson, surely we can reach an agreement that protects everyone's interests. Your son made some poor choices, but destroying his future won't bring back the past. I stood up. You know what destroys families? Stealing from people who trust you. Lying to people who love you. Taking advantage of someone's grief to line your own pockets. I walked to the front door and opened it. You have 28 days left. Full restitution, signed confession, or criminal prosecution. Your choice. Crawford gathered his papers. Marcus lingered by the door. Dad, I never meant for it to go this far. But it did, Marcus. And now you have to face the consequences. After they left, I sat back down in my chair by the window and called David Kim. They came with a lawyer, I told him. Offered restitution but no confession. Standard opening move, David said. They're testing how serious you are. His son asked if he'd destroy family over money. What's your response to that question? Sarah's car pulled into my driveway at 3 in the afternoon on a cold January Saturday. She didn't call first. She just drove the 5 hours from Atlanta to Dayton because that's what she does when her family needs her. I watched from the living room window as she sat in her car for a full minute before getting out. Even from a distance, I could see she'd been crying. When she knocked, I opened the door to find my daughter holding a manila envelope and looking like her heart was breaking. Dad, she said, and her voice cracked on that single word. I pulled her into a hug right there on the front porch, not caring who might see an old man holding his crying daughter in the cold January air. Come inside, honey. It's freezing out here. We sat at the kitchen table where I'd written that letter to Marcus 3 weeks earlier. Sarah placed the envelope between us like evidence in a trial. I brought copies of everything, she said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Every wire transfer confirmation. Every email Marcus sent me. Every time he thanked me on your behalf for money you never received. She opened the envelope and spread the papers across the table. Months of deception laid out in black ink on white paper. Look at this, she said, pointing to an email dated 6 months ago. Marcus wrote, Dad says the money is really helping with his medical bills. He's too proud to thank you directly, but he asked me to tell you how much it means to him. I stared at the email. I'd never said any such thing. 6 months ago, I didn't even know Sarah was sending money. And this one, Sarah continued, her anger building with each page. Marcus told me you were considering moving to a retirement community, and the monthly support was helping you save for the deposit. I've never considered moving anywhere. I know that now. Sarah's voice was getting stronger, the tears replaced by righteous fury. Dad, I was so worried when you never called to thank me or even acknowledge the money. I thought maybe you were embarrassed, or that you didn't want to feel like a burden. That hit me right in the chest. Sarah, you could never be a burden. And I would have called you every single month to thank you for that kind of generosity. I should have called you directly. I should have insisted on talking to you instead of letting Marcus handle everything. She gathered the papers into a neat stack. But I trusted him because he's family. We both trusted him. Sarah looked at me across the kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework as a little girl, where we'd eaten countless family dinners, where Mom had taught her how to make pie crust. Dad, I want to help you get every penny back. And I want everyone to know what really happened here. It might get ugly, honey. Marcus hired a lawyer. They're fighting this. Sarah stood up from the table, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother when Mom had made up her mind about something. Let them fight. I've got 11 months of wire transfer confirmations that prove I sent you that money. They've got nothing but lies and excuses. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We're going to make this right, Dad. This is what real family loyalty looks like. Comment, family, if this moment touched you. The check arrived on a Wednesday morning in February, exactly 29 days after I'd sent that letter. Certified mail, same as the letter had been, requiring my signature for delivery. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it for a full 5 minutes before opening the envelope. The check was drawn on Marcus's business account. $87,432. Plus interest calculated at prime rate. Plus my legal fees. Even plus the cost of the private investigator. Everything I demanded, down to the last penny. But there was no apology letter. No explanation. No acknowledgement of what he'd done or why he'd done it. Just a cashier's check in a one-page document his lawyer had drafted, stating that this payment resolved all financial matters between us. No admission of guilt. No confession. Just money changing hands like a business transaction. I called David Kim immediately. The check clears, he told me after running it through the bank's verification system. Funds are guaranteed. Your son met the financial terms of your ultimatum. But no confession. No confession, David confirmed. He's avoiding criminal liability by making full restitution, but he's not admitting to any wrongdoing. I deposited the check that afternoon. $87,000 flowing back into my account where it belonged. The bank manager, Mrs. Peterson, processed the deposit personally. Will this close the matter? She asked. The financial part, yes. But some things can't be fixed with money. That evening, Sarah called from Atlanta. Dad, Marcus called me today. He said he made full restitution and wanted me to know the matter was resolved. What did you tell him? I told him that paying back stolen money doesn't make you less of a thief. Sarah's voice was steady, final. I told him he was no longer welcome in my life either. Sarah, you don't have to choose sides in this. He's still your brother. He stopped being my brother when he stole from my father and lied to my face for 11 months. She paused. Dad, I've set up automatic transfers to your real account. Same amount, same schedule. But this time, I'll be calling you every month to make sure you receive it. The money was back in my account. The theft had been stopped. Justice, in its technical sense, had been served. But justice and healing are two different things. Marcus never called me. Never apologized. Never explained why he'd stolen from his own father during the worst grief of my life. The money he returned felt cold, mechanical, like paying a parking fine. 3 weeks later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Jennifer's niece was getting married in Charlotte. A family celebration. My name was not on the invitation. The message was clear, I'd been paid back, but I'd been cut off. Restitution without reconciliation. Money without forgiveness. I threw the invitation in the trash and made myself a cup of coffee. Some betrayals leave scars that no amount of money can heal. Some family bonds, once broken, can't be glued back together with cashier's checks. But at least now I knew exactly where I stood. Is justice enough when family betrays you? Share your thoughts on forgiveness versus consequences. This Christmas Eve, the table was smaller. Just Sarah and me in my dining room in Dayton, with a simple ham dinner and store-bought rolls. No fancy house in Charlotte. No extended family gathering. No children asking innocent questions that explode hidden secrets. But for the first time in 2 years, every word spoken at this table was honest. Pass the green beans, Dad. They're right there, honey. Simple. Real. No undercurrents of deception, no money changing hands in shadows, no family members monitoring each other for signs of discovery. Sarah had driven up from Atlanta that morning, same as she had every Christmas for the past 30 years. But this year felt different. Cleaner, somehow. I've been thinking about Mom, she said, cutting into her ham. About what she would have said about all this. I smiled, remembering my late wife's no-nonsense approach to family problems. She would have said that thieves are thieves, even if they share your last name. She would have been proud of you for standing up for yourself. And disappointed that it came to this. Sarah nodded. Some disappointments can't be avoided, Dad. Sometimes people make choices that force your hand. Over dinner, we talked about the practical things. Sarah's monthly support payments were coming directly to me now, same amount as before, but with complete transparency. She called every month when the transfer went through. We'd even set up a joint savings account so she could see exactly how the money was being used. It should have always been this way, she said. Open. Honest. After dinner, we moved to the living room. I'd put up a small tree this year, nothing fancy, but the lights were bright and steady. Sarah sat on the couch where her mother used to sit, and I took my chair by the window. Any regrets? She asked. I thought about it seriously. About getting the money back? No. About filing the police report? No. About demanding full restitution? No. What about Marcus? That was the harder question. I regret that he made the choices he made. I regret that I lost a son along with the money. But I don't regret holding him accountable. Sarah pulled an envelope from her purse. I got this last week. It was a Christmas card from Marcus and Jennifer. Generic holiday greeting, no personal message, addressed only to Sarah. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Are you going to respond? I asked. No, she said simply. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the tree lights twinkle in the darkened room. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, dusting the street with white. Dad, Sarah said finally, I've started volunteering with a senior advocacy group in Atlanta. Helping elderly people recognize financial abuse. Turns out, what happened to you happens to a lot of families. Good, I said. Maybe some other grandfather won't have to go through what we went through. I tell them your story sometimes. How you didn't get angry, didn't make accusations, just gathered evidence and demanded justice. They say you handled it like a textbook case. I had good help. Frank. David Kim. You. We had each other. The lights on this year's tree seemed brighter than last year's, not because there were more of them, but because nothing was hidden in their shadows. Financial abuse of seniors is more common than we want to admit. Drop a heart if this story opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before.